18 months ago, I told my sister I was thinking about retiring abroad. She looked at me like I'd said I was joining the circus.
Most people picture it as a fantasy. Umbrella drinks, cheap rent, ocean views. I used to think that too.
Then I started actually doing it, and what I found was something completely different from every article I'd read, every video I'd watched. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the real math behind retiring abroad, TAD, not the fantasy version. The version that includes the things nobody tells you until it's too late.
I'm Tom Wynn. I started at 47 with $7,200 in the bank. I'm 55 now. And I made the decision to retire outside the United States. What I didn't expect, that's what this video is about. And the first thing that surprised me has nothing to do with money. Here's what nobody puts in those top 10 countries to retire abroad lists. The part that hits you before the visa paperwork, before the cost of living spreadsheet, before you even book a flight to go look at apartments. It's not money. It's identity. I've spent a lot of time on this channel talking about the financial side of being a late starter. The catch-up contributions, the Roth conversions, the spreadsheet that finally told me I was going to be okay. And when I started researching retiring abroad, I assumed that was still the whole game. Just run the numbers, pick the cheapest country, done. What I didn't expect was the other conversation. The one that doesn't happen in forums or YouTube comments. The one you have with yourself at 2 a.m. when you're looking at a photo of an apartment in Lisbon or Medellín or the Algarve, and something underneath the excitement feels a lot like grief. I want to be honest with you about this because I think it's the thing most people figure out too late. And figuring it out late when you're already there is a very different experience than figuring it out now. When you retire abroad, you're not just changing your address. You're stepping out of the context that told you who you were. For a long time, maybe even without realizing it, that context was doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Think about what that means for a minute. For 22 years, I was a regional sales rep in Columbus, Ohio. I knew where the good coffee was. I knew which grocery store had the shortest lines on Sunday. I had a dry cleaner who knew my name. I had a neighbor, Dave, who'd been waving at me from his driveway since 2009. I had a mechanic I trusted. A diner I went to on Saturday mornings where the same waitress had been there since before I moved to that side of town, and she never needed to ask what I wanted. Just brought it. None of that sounds like much. Until you're sitting in a furnished rental in another country and you realize you don't know a single person within 4,000 miles. And the diner is gone now, and Dave sold the house last spring. It's a different family's driveway. A woman named Carol sent me a message about 4 months ago. She'd retired to the coast of Portugal at 63, exactly the kind of move that sounds like a dream when you describe it at a dinner party. Beautiful photos, affordable rent, warm weather 9 months a year. She said the first 6 months were the best of her life. New food, new light. The feeling that the clock had been reset. And then the second year started. She said something to me I haven't been able to shake. Tom, I didn't realize how much of my personality was just knowing where things were. I read that 3 times. Because that's it, isn't it? A huge part of how we move through the world, the confidence, the ease, the quiet sense that we belong somewhere, is built on accumulated familiarity. The routes you drive without thinking. The doctor who has your records. The sound of your city at 6 a.m. Your particular piece of it, worn smooth by years of use. Strip all of that away and you're starting over. Not financially. Personally. And for some people, that's liberating. For others, it quietly breaks something they didn't know was load-bearing. I'm not telling you this to talk you out of anything. I made the decision. I'm going through with it. But I almost made it purely on the numbers, and I think if I had, I would have landed somewhere beautiful and been completely blindsided by what I felt inside it. Here's what the data actually shows. According to research from the University of Michigan's Health and Retirement Study, social isolation in retirement is one of the top 3 predictors of cognitive decline after 65, ranking alongside physical inactivity and chronic stress. Not a minor footnote, a primary driver. That number stopped me cold the first time I read it, because a lot of people who retire abroad do it alone. Or they do it as a couple and lose one partner to illness or divorce a few years in. And suddenly you're in a country where you don't have deep roots, you don't speak the language natively, and the social network you spent decades building is 8 time zones away. That's not a reason not to go. It's a reason to go with your eyes open. Carol figured it out. I'll tell you how, but not yet. Right now, I want to get into the part that surprised me second. And this one actually is about money. Just not in the way I expected. The money surprise isn't what you think it is. It's not that life abroad costs more than the forms say, though sometimes it does. It's not hidden fees or currency risk or the cost of flying home twice a year to see your kids. The money surprise is that America comes with you. I don't mean that in a sentimental way. I mean it in a tax code way. The United States is one of only 2 countries in the entire world that taxes its citizens based on citizenship rather than residency. The other one is Eritrea. That is the complete list. Every other developed nation, the UK, Canada, Germany, Australia, stops taxing you when you stop living there. The US does not. You can move to Portugal, Costa Rica, or Thailand, establish legal residency, live there full-time, and the IRS will still expect a tax return every single year for the rest of your life, simply because you were born here. I had read this before I started researching seriously. I thought I understood it. Then I sat down with a tax professional who specializes in expat Americans, someone who does this for a living, not a general accountant, and I realized I had barely scratched the surface. Here's what caught me. There's a provision in the tax code called the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, the FEIE. A lot of articles about retiring abroad mention it like it solves the problem. The exclusion lets you shield up to $126,500 of foreign earned income from U.S. taxes in 2024. Sounds helpful, except the word those articles quietly skip over is earned. The FEIE applies to wages and self-employment income. It does not apply to Social Security. It does not apply to 401k or IRA distributions. It does not apply to investment income. It does not apply to pension payments. For most people retiring abroad, people in their 50s and 60s living on savings, distributions, and eventually Social Security, the foreign earned income exclusion does almost nothing. The tax obligation follows you anyway. That was the first layer. The second layer hit harder. Medicare. If you've been working in the United States, you've been paying into Medicare your entire career. And once you hit 65, you'll pay Part B premiums, currently $174.70 a month, to maintain that coverage. Standard, expected, fine. Except Medicare does not work outside the United States. With very limited exceptions, a handful of specific border crossing situations, Medicare will not pay a single dollar of medical expenses incurred in another country. So if you retire abroad at 63, you're paying into a system for 2 years that provides you zero benefit where you actually live. And at 65, you're paying $174.70 a month for insurance you legally cannot use. You have options. Private international health insurance is real, it's available, and in your early 60s, before most serious conditions develop, it can run significantly less than US-based coverage. I've seen quotes for healthy individuals in their early 60s in the $200 to $400 range per month, depending on the country and coverage level. But it's an additional layer of planning that most people skip because they assume Medicare is the plan. It is, if you stay. If you go, that assumption has to be rebuilt from scratch. There's a third layer too: state taxes. Some states, including California and Virginia, have a history of attempting to tax former residents who move abroad, depending on how strong your remaining ties to the state are. Property, bank accounts, family. It's not universal and it's not automatic. But it's one more thing the forums don't mention. I want to be honest about where I reach the edge of what I personally know. I'm not a tax attorney. I'm not a financial advisor. The specifics of your situation, which state you lived in, how your income is structured, whether you have a pension, all of it changes the calculation. What I'm giving you is the general shape of what surprised me. And the biggest surprise wasn't any single number. It was the realization that the system I'd been paying into for 30 years was designed around one assumption: that I would stay. That assumption is baked in at every level. We're going to get to real cost comparisons in a few minutes. What a retirement income of $3,500 a month actually buys you in different places. But before that, I need to tell you about something else I didn't see coming. Something that isn't in any tax code. Something Carol ran straight into in year 2 and almost didn't make it through. Here's the thing about year 2. Year 1, you're still running on the energy of the decision. Everything is new. Even the inconveniences feel like part of the adventure. The language barrier is charming. Getting lost is a story you'll tell later. You're still in the arriving phase, and arriving feels good. Year 2 is where reality sets its bill on the table. Carol was in Portugal, on the coast, and by her own account, she was happy. Genuinely happy. She'd found a small expat community. She'd started taking Portuguese lessons twice a week. She had a routine: a cafe in the morning, a walk in the evening, a kind of quiet structure she'd built carefully from nothing. And then one afternoon in her second year, she had chest pains that scared her badly enough to call for help. It wasn't a heart attack. It turned out to be a severe anxiety episode, the first of her life, which she later told me was its own kind of shock. But she ended up in a Portuguese emergency room, alone, in a country where her language skills were still elementary, without a single family member within a 6-hour flight. She said the medical care was actually good. She said the staff was kind. Her out-of-pocket cost for the ER visit and the follow-up consultation was under $200, which, coming from the American system, felt almost fictional. That part worked. What didn't work was everything else. Trying to communicate symptoms in a language she half knew, not having a local doctor who knew her history, sitting in that waiting room and realizing there was no one she could call who could physically be there within the hour. Not one person, nobody who knew her face. That was the moment I understood what I'd actually done, she wrote to me. I'd moved somewhere beautiful, but I hadn't built a life there yet. I want to sit with that for a moment, because I think it's the most important sentence in this entire video. There's a difference between moving abroad and building a life abroad. The first is a transaction, a flight, a lease, a change of address. The second takes years. And if a health event, a crisis, anything unexpected catches you while you're still in the first phase, you feel it in a way that no spreadsheet could have warned you about. Now, here's where I need to be honest about something I haven't said out loud before. There was a week about 8 months ago when I almost called the whole thing off. I had done the research, I had the numbers, I had a country I was leaning toward, and a rough plan for getting there. And then one night I sat down and thought about what it would actually feel like Sick, alone, confused, in a waiting room in another country, and I couldn't move past it. I sat with that feeling for 4 days. Didn't tell anyone, didn't open the laptop. I'm not telling you this to be dramatic. I'm telling you because I think if you're seriously considering this and you haven't had that moment yet, you might not have thought it all the way through. That fear is real information. It's not a reason to stop, but it deserves to be taken seriously and worked through before you sign a lease anywhere. Here's what I found on the other side of it. Healthcare abroad is genuinely, structurally different in most of the countries that attract American retirees. In Portugal, an ER visit for a non-emergency can run under $200. A specialist consultation in Mexico City or Medellín often costs $30 to $60 out of pocket. A full private health insurance plan in Colombia for a healthy 60-year-old can run around $150 to $200 a month. These aren't compromised numbers. These are countries with functioning modern medical infrastructure where the cost model is simply different from ours. But cost is only half the picture. The other half is continuity. A doctor who knows you, a system that has your records, a pharmacist who recognizes your name. That takes time to build. That takes real intention. It requires treating the process of building a healthcare relationship abroad with the same seriousness you'd give the financial model. Carol eventually did that. It took her almost a full year after the ER night. But she did it. I'll tell you where she landed, but not yet. Right now, I want to get into the part most people research first and understand last, or never. The visa, the paperwork, the actual mechanics of legally becoming a resident somewhere else. Because what I found there surprised me in ways I'm still thinking through. Most people think moving abroad is a lifestyle decision. And it is. But before it's a lifestyle decision, it's a legal one. And the legal part has teeth. Here's what I didn't fully understand until I started talking to people who had actually done it. Not the bloggers, the actual people, about how they got their residency. You cannot simply move to another country and live there. You need permission. And for most popular retirement destinations, that permission comes in the form of a visa that requires you to prove on paper to a foreign government that you can financially sustain yourself without becoming a burden on their system. That sounds reasonable in the abstract. The reality of building that paper trail from inside the United States while still living your current life is something else entirely. Let's start with Europe, because that's where most Americans set their sights first. The Schengen Agreement covers 27 European countries, including France, Spain, Germany, Italy, and Portugal. As an American citizen, you can travel throughout the Schengen zone without a visa, but only for 90 days out of every 180. That's the rule, 90 days. Then you have to leave. That's not enough time to retire there, not legally, not continuously. To actually live in Portugal, which has been one of the most searched retirement destinations for Americans for several years, you need to apply for a long-term visa before you arrive. Portugal's D7 passive income visa is the most common route for retirees. To qualify, you need to demonstrate a monthly passive income of roughly 820 euros, around $900 at current exchange rates. That covers Social Security, pension, IRA distributions, rental income. If your income qualifies, you apply at the Portuguese consulate in the United States, submit bank statements, a criminal background check, proof of health insurance, proof of housing, and a handful of other documents, each of which may need to be officially translated and apostilled. An apostille is a form of international document authentication. If you've never heard the word before, expect to spend significant time learning it. Background checks, birth certificates, tax records, depending on the country, some or all of these need to be apostilled to be considered valid abroad. The processing time for the D7 varies. It's often 3 to 5 months. Some applicants report longer. And this is before you've moved. You're doing this from Ohio or wherever you currently live while still managing your regular life. I want to be clear about something here. I'm not saying any of this to discourage you. I'm saying it because the version of retiring abroad that gets shared online, the one with the beach photos and the "I live like a king on $2,000 a month" captions, leaves this part out entirely. And when you skip the paper reality, you skip the planning window. And when you skip the planning window, you end up scrambling. Panama has a program called the Pensionado Visa. It requires proof of a lifetime pension income of at least $1,000 a month. Social Security qualifies, and it comes with meaningful benefits. Discounts on hotels, restaurants, utilities, and medical care. Costa Rica has a similar structure. Colombia requires roughly $750 a month in verifiable income for its retirement visa category. Mexico is different. There's no specific retirement visa. But to stay longer than 180 days, you need a temporary resident visa, which requires demonstrating monthly investment income or savings, currently around $2,000 a month in regular income or roughly $43,000 in a savings account. Every country has its own rules, its own processing times, its own list of documents, and those rules change. Portugal's tax incentive program for foreign residents, which had attracted tens of thousands of expats, was significantly restructured in 2024. People who had planned around those tax benefits had to recalculate. The point isn't that any of this is impossible. Hundreds of thousands of Americans live abroad legally, comfortably right now. The point is that it requires a lead time most people don't build in. 2 years, not 2 months. And once you clear the visa, once you're legal, once you have an address, that's when the real question surfaces. The one this whole video has been building toward. Does the math actually work? That's the next part. And it's the part I think will change how you see this entire conversation. The math. This is the part everyone wants to get to first. And I understand that. I'm someone who built a spreadsheet before I did anything else. Numbers feel like solid ground when everything else is uncertain. So let's actually look at them. Real cities, real budgets. What a retirement income actually buys you in places where Americans are choosing to land right now. I'm going to use $3,200 a month as the baseline, which is roughly what someone gets from Social Security at full retirement age if they averaged a solid middle-class income over a 35-year work history. Not a high earner, not a low one, the middle. And for a lot of people watching this, that income isn't all here yet. It's coming in 5 or 7 years. But the planning happens now. In Medellín, Colombia, which has become one of the most popular destinations for American retirees under 65, a one-bedroom apartment in a safe, walkable neighborhood runs roughly $600 to $800 a month. Groceries for one person, buying local, run about $200 to $250. A monthly transit pass is around $25. Private health insurance for a healthy 60-year-old, as I mentioned earlier, is in the $150 to $200 range. Add utilities, internet, dining out regularly, and a reasonable entertainment budget, you're looking at a total monthly spend of around $1,600 to $1,900. On $3,200 a month, that leaves meaningful surplus. Not vacation money, actual savings. Room to breathe in a way that simply isn't available on that same income in Columbus or Phoenix or Portland. Oaxaca, Mexico tells a similar story. A furnished one-bedroom in a good neighborhood runs $500 to $700. Total monthly budget, including everything, $400 to $1,800. Again, real room below that $3,200 ceiling. Now, here's where I need to say something that most channels in this space won't say because it goes against the narrative that drives their view counts. Lisbon, Portugal, the city that appears on more best places to retire abroad lists than anywhere else right now, is no longer cheap. Rents in Lisbon have roughly doubled since 2019. A one-bedroom apartment in a livable central neighborhood now runs $1,400 to $1,900 a month. The overall monthly cost of living for a single person, budgeted carefully, is $2,800 to $3,400. On $3,200 a month before U.S. tax obligations, you're not saving anything. You're roughly breaking even or running a small deficit. And that's before the cost of flights home, the U.S. expat tax preparation fees, which often run $500 to $1,500 a year with a qualified professional, and whatever U.S. financial ties you're still maintaining. Porto and the Algarve are somewhat more affordable than Lisbon, but the trend across Portugal is upward, and it has been accelerating for years. The same dynamic is starting to affect parts of Mexico and Colombia that were cheap 5 years ago. Thailand, specifically Chiang Mai, is still genuinely inexpensive. Total monthly budgets in the $1,200 to $1,500 range are realistic for a comfortable life. But the distance from the United States is real. A round-trip flight home is expensive. The time difference makes staying connected to family difficult. For some people, that's fine. For others, it compounds the isolation problem I described earlier, and the compound effect of that over years is something I want you to take seriously. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. The financial case for retiring abroad is real. In the right country, on an income most Americans would consider modest, you can live well, with a margin to save or to travel, or simply to exhale for the first time in a long time. That's not exaggeration. It's what hundreds of thousands of Americans are actually doing right now. But the gap between the fantasy version and the working version matters. The fantasy version ignores taxes, healthcare setup, visa costs, the ongoing price of maintaining connection to your home country, and the reality that popular destinations get more expensive precisely because so many people keep moving there. The working version accounts for all of it. It's more complicated, but it holds up. I ran my own numbers 7 times over 18 months. 7 separate scenarios, different countries, different income assumptions, different decisions about what I'd keep and what I'd let go. And the answer kept pointing in the same direction. Clearly. Where I'm actually going and why, that's the next part of this video. 7 times. I ran the numbers 7 times. Different countries, different assumptions, different versions of who I was going to be on the other side of this decision. And every time I kept coming back to the same place, the same city. Before I tell you where and why, I want to give you the actual framework I used, because I think it matters more to you than the destination does. Your numbers are different from mine. Your income structure is different. Your family situation, your health, your risk tolerance, your willingness to be far from the people you love. What worked for my math won't automatically work for yours. So don't start with the destination, start with the filters. Here's how I broke it down. The first filter was financial viability, and I mean the full picture, not the headline. Monthly expenses, U.S. tax obligations, healthcare setup costs, visa fees amortized over time, and at least 2 round-trip flights home per year baked in from the start. If the total monthly outflow exceeded 80% of my projected retirement income, the country came off the list. I wanted margin, not luxury, margin. There's a difference. Luxury is a want. Margin is what keeps a plan alive when something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong. The second filter was healthcare infrastructure. Not just cost, actual infrastructure. Does the country have hospitals with modern equipment in the specific city I was considering? Are there English-speaking physicians who see expat patients regularly? Is there an established pathway, meaning other Americans had already been doing this long enough that the system knew how to handle it? I wasn't going to be the first one figuring it out. That privilege costs too much, and usually in the worst possible moment. The third filter, and this is the one I almost left off the list, was community density. How many English-speaking expats already live there? Not because I want to live in an American bubble, I don't. But because the data on isolation was still sitting in the back of my mind, and I was determined not to replicate Carol's year 2 experience. I wanted to land somewhere I could build real relationships from day 1, not from year 2. One country cleared all 3 filters consistently every single time I ran it. Medellín, Colombia. If you've never looked seriously at Medellín, the name might give you pause. I understand that. It gave me pause too the first time I typed it into a search bar. But the city that exists today is not the city from 30 years ago. It was named one of the world's most innovative cities in 2013. It has a modern metro system, world-class hospitals, a thriving arts and food scene, and one of the largest English-speaking expat communities in Latin America. The climate is called the City of Eternal Spring for a reason, averaging around 72 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. No brutal winters, no heating bills, no scraping ice off the car at 6 a.m. in the dark, which I have done for 22 Ohio winters and will not miss. And the math works. On $3,200 a month, living comfortably in Medellín, I project a monthly surplus of $1,200 to $1,400 after all expenses, including Colombian private health insurance, estimated U.S. tax obligations, and 2 round-trip flights home per year. I want to pause here for a second, because this is exactly the kind of content I was searching for at 11 p.m. in 2019, alone in my apartment in Columbus, staring at $7,200 and wondering if I had any path forward at all. If what I'm sharing here is giving you something real, not promises, not beach photos, but actual framework, I'd ask you to subscribe to this channel. Not for the number, because there's more coming. Real decisions documented in real time by someone who is still in the middle of making them and is not going to pretend otherwise. If you're somewhere on this climb, I want you to have company. Now, the financial case is clear, but the financial case isn't what made the final decision for me. There was something else. Something I found when I went to Medellín in person, spent 3 weeks walking the neighborhoods, sitting in the parks, talking to people who had made this exact move years before me. Something I wasn't looking for and didn't expect to find. That's what the last part of this video is about, and it connects directly back to Carol, and to what she said when I asked her whether, knowing everything she knows now, she would do it again. Here's what I found in Medellín. I was in a neighborhood called El Poblado on a Tuesday afternoon, sitting outside a cafe near a small park. I had my notebook. I had done this 3 or 4 times that week, just sitting in different neighborhoods, watching, trying to feel whether this was somewhere I could actually live or just somewhere I'd been visiting with a spreadsheet in my pocket. A man sat down at the table next to mine. Late 60s, American, I could tell immediately. We started talking the way strangers do when they're both far from home. He'd been in Medellín for 6 years. Before that, 23 years as a mid-level operations manager at an insurance company in Cincinnati. Wife had passed away 4 years into the move. He told me that quietly, without drama. Said he almost went back to Cincinnati. Sat with it for 2 months. Didn't. He was teaching English 2 mornings a week at a community center in a neighborhood 20 minutes away, volunteering at a local garden on Saturdays. Had a group of friends that included a retired Colombian architect, a Dutch woman who'd moved there to paint, a Peruvian doctor, and 3 Americans who had arrived in different years and stayed for different reasons. I asked him how he'd describe his life. He thought about it for a moment, looked out at the park. Then he said, "I feel like I finally got to write my own description." I sat with that for a long time. I didn't write anything else in my notebook after that. Because that's the thing about retiring abroad that I couldn't have told you from a spreadsheet or a visa guide or a tax document. When you step out of the context that defined you, the job, the commute, the city, the version of yourself that other people have known for 20 years, you lose something. I said that in the beginning of this video. That loss is real. But what I didn't know until I sat in that park in Medellín is that on the other side of the loss, there's a question. Maybe the most important question of the second half of your life. Who do you actually want to be? Not who do you have to be. Not who is expected of you. Not the version of you that accumulated gradually through choices made under different pressures. Who do you want to be, starting now, with whatever time and resources you actually have? For most people in their 50s and 60s, the American context never really asks that question. It just keeps you moving forward on the track you're already on. I heard from Carol last month. She's still in Portugal. She has a Portuguese doctor now who knows her history. She has 3 close friends in her town. 2 are expats, 1 is Portuguese. She walks every morning. She reads in the afternoons. She said something in her message that I've been thinking about ever since. I moved somewhere beautiful. Then I had a hard year. Then I built a life. I wouldn't trade any part of it, not even the hard year. That was the part that made it real. I think about the person searching YouTube at 11 p.m. in 2019, except it wasn't someone else. It was me, alone in my apartment in Columbus, looking for someone who had actually been where I was, who had made the mistakes and was still in the middle of the climb. That person didn't exist on YouTube, so I became him. The real math of retiring abroad, the math I promised you at the beginning of this video, isn't just the numbers. The numbers are necessary, the visa process is real, the tax code follows you, the identity shift is real, the year 2 test is real. All of it is real and none of it is disqualifying. The real math is this. What is staying costing you in ways that don't show up on a balance sheet? Only you can answer that. But I think you already know. If this video gave you something, a framework, a number, a question worth sitting with, please subscribe to this channel. And share it with 5 people you know who are somewhere in this same conversation. Not to sell them anything, just to give them company on the climb. And if you have a topic you want me to dig into, Social Security timing, Roth conversion windows, what the first 90 days of residency abroad actually look like, leave it in the comments. I read everyone. I'm building this channel the same way I built the financial plan, one honest step at a time. I'm Tom Wynn. I started at 47. I'm 55 now. And I'm still figuring it out. But for the first time in my adult life, I'm figuring it out on my own terms.